Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unrestricted Sports. Before we get into today's episode, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It does help out the video a lot. Let's get right into the episode. So I'm sure you know what we're covering today, at least based on the title. We're covering another few games of the NBA. And to start off, we are covering the Lakers. And there are a number of things to talk about with them. To start off, since I am hoping the Lakers win this year, obviously, I'm going to start talking about LeBron. And part of that has to do with how I'm not sold on how he's looking. I don't know if he's saving up for the playoffs or what, but he isn't looking great. The headline that Bleacher Report put out was LeBron and AD combined for 64 points, when the reality of that was that LeBron only had 22 of those 64 points between the two. So hardly an equal split, bar from being an impressive domination of a night by LeBron.
You could say,
what was it?
You could say with that too that okay, if AD is going to go off, then I guess LeBron doesn't need to get as many points. But at the same time, if there's going to be games where Anthony Davis isn't going to go off, then LeBron James,
He better show up.
being who people think he is, needs to show up. And that was proven when they played the Raptors. Anthony Davis didn't have a good day of shooting. 2 for 7 for 14 points and 1 3. LeBron only got 20 points. Obviously, off the bench, you have contributors there. But based off of how the Lakers usually play, Anthony Davis or LeBron James is usually dominant. And neither of them were dominant in the loss to the Raptors, at least.
Yeah, and so that brings up the question, well, if AD isn't dominant, LeBron isn't doing well. And so that raises some significant concerns because if AD can't get it done, LeBron hasn't shown up either. So, and also keep in mind, LeBron is trying to win an MVP here. Unless he knows something we don't, he knows he already has it in the bag, which I don't think that should be the case, but we know how NBA voters sometimes are. Unless that's the case, he's still fighting for an MVP award too. So, I don't know. I'm not impressed, and he better be saving up for the playoffs because otherwise he's not going to win the finals. And if he doesn't win the finals, I'm out on LeBron being the GOAT. But there is some good news for the Lakers as well, and that is that they clinched the number 1 seed. The last time they did that, obviously, they won the finals. So, they did that with Kobe as well, and obviously this is a very important year for the Lakers too. They obviously want to try to honor Kobe by winning a chip here. So, there's a lot riding on the Lakers this year for their franchise if this LeBron experiment will work out. And I'm hoping that LeBron is just saving up for the playoffs. But if he isn't, and this turns out to be a recurring issue that's causing the Lakers games, I think it's cause for concern.
Yeah, I'm a big MJ is better than LeBron guy, being a Chicago sports fan. So I don't want to say that this would ruin his career if he didn't do spectacular. But given all the hype that was put around the Lakers organization, with the addition of Anthony Davis and all that drama with the trading of Lonzo and Brandon Ingram, they traded away their young core to win now. And if they don't win now, they're going to have to restart with a young core. And that young core is looking good in New Orleans.
Except for Lonzo. Lonzo still doesn't know how to shoot. But
But
beyond that, let's move on from the Lakers for now. And move on to the next team. We just brought them up, the Raptors. They beat the Lakers, which I don't think anyone really expected. And I think it is really a testament to just how good the Raptors team is. And everyone kind of counted them out without Kawhi. Like, Kawhi was what made that team. People forget about guys like Kyle Lowry and all these other guys who are on that team who made that team so special as well.
Yeah. I'm curious as to why they're. I'm not a big supporter of the Toronto Raptors. I'm public enemy number 1 against the Raptors. I have my reasons for that, but it doesn't. There's no star player really on this team that is the reason they're winning. Obviously, you can say that Fred VanVleet put up 36 against Miami, and that's
also
impressive.
Good team effort. It's also a good team effort.
Yeah, and that's my point here is they're winning strictly because of that team effort. I mean, you had almost everybody that played contributing. except for a couple of lower bench guys, and contributing significantly. If it's not in points, it's in other areas like
Well,
rebounding, specifically for Marc Gasol.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though. I mean,
No, I don't think it's a bad thing either. But I think
in the NBA we get so fixated on superstars that we forget that it's a team sport. Teams can just as easily win against superstars. We saw that with LeBron in his early years.
My only problem is if for example, Lakers and Raptors meet in the playoffs.
Lakers better show up.
Well, Lakers will have to show up, and by show up, I mean it's not just going to be Anthony Davis dominating. It's going to have to be LeBron and Anthony Davis dominating. Yeah. And if that doesn't happen, for the Lakers side of it, the Lakers are probably going to lose. But for the Raptors side of it, I don't know if team ball can carry you to a win over LeBron James and Anthony Davis going off.
I think they still could, but it's a lot more difficult if they both go off. If only one of them goes off, they can definitely do it. But if both of them go off, it's a lot harder. Yeah. But I think they could still pull it off.
Yeah. Long story short, Raptors are going to have to win this year, purely based off of team play, and I definitely would consider them to be a sleeper, despite them being very highly ranked in the NBA.
All right. So moving on next, we have possibly the biggest shock. I would have said that the Lakers losing to the Raptors would have been the biggest shock just because of how unexpected it was after they beat the Clippers. But this is definitely the biggest shock. The Nets, missing some of their star players from opt-outs, beat the Bucks. Like, I saw that headline. I was like, this has got to be fake. Yahoo Sports has been hacked. No, it actually happened. The Nets beat the Bucks. It's insane. I don't understand.
I know this is at least a rumor going around, but the Houston Rockets provided scouting reports to the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know if that's true or not, but this is another case of similar to that of the Raptors, where team ball really kind of showed up. Every player that played scored significantly, and if their points wise weren't significant, they made up for it in another area. But I think the bigger surprise here isn't that the Nets won, but more that the Bucks lost, if you know what I mean.
And this loss is a lot more important for the Bucks than the loss to the Raptors was for the Lakers.
Yes.
Like let's not forget that too.
Yeah,
the Bucks still haven't clinched anything.
And the Bucks, their problem is it seems to be that they can dominate at times, but defensively they seem to just lack at points.
Yeah. Giannis is the only one who I consistently think is good on defense, and everyone else kind of has their hot moments and kind of fades off.
Yeah. I mean, shooting-wise, you're almost shooting 50%, which isn't spectacular. But I mean, shooting at that percentage, you should be able to win a game. Obviously, it was a 3-point difference in favor of Brooklyn, so I can't really pinpoint the reason why the Bucks lost this game. I think it would probably just have to do with the lackluster defense that I saw. But obviously, this could have just been a fluke loss for the Bucks.
I mean, yeah, that too. It's not like the Bucks just lost to the Grumpy Boy Nets with KD and Kyrie being there. No, they didn't have the Grumpy Boys with them. They just straight up lost to guys who most of us probably can't name off the top of our head just because they're not stars. They're not star players, which I think is a big oversight in the NBA that a lot of the smaller name guys don't really get recognized. But that being said, obviously a great win for them. They should be proud of that because they did still beat the Bucks, who are a finals contender this year. So there's a lot to be proud of there, and there's a lot for Nets fans to look forward to in the future with the return of Kyrie and KD.
Yes, definitely. I'm ready to move on to this next team because I think this next team that we're going to cover is
yes,
intriguing,
definitely,
to say the least.
So that next team is the Rockets. And
yes.
It's the Harden Westbrook duo that everyone seems to be sleeping on. And I wasn't aware that people were sleeping on it until I heard about it just recently.
They weren't ranked in the top 10. I forget who it was. I want to say Bleacher Report, but I don't want to say it is them for sure.
I mean, it would make sense. They don't usually know what they're talking about.
Yeah. But, I mean, they weren't in the top 10 duos in the NBA bubble. And immediately, right out of the gates, those people were proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
Westbrook and Harden. I'll read their stats line for the 3 games they've played in this bubble, points wise only. Westbrook 31, Harden 49 against the Mavericks. Let's see. Westbrook 31, Harden 24 against the Bucks in a win. They beat the Mavericks as well. And then in a loss to the Trailblazers, Westbrook 15, Harden 23.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how those two can't be in the top 10 pairing, because to me they would be a possible top 5.
Yeah.
In fact, they should be a top 5.
Yeah. I think what proves it is their play in this bubble. To be honest with you, I just read off their stat lines for points at least for these games, and they win when they do well, and when they didn't do very well, they lost to the Trailblazers of all teams. Not that they're bad, but you would hope that the Rockets, being the contender they are, would beat the Trailblazers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Rockets have definitely had a good start to the bubble. I mean, they have one loss
Yeah,
in the bubble so
one
far.
loss so far.
Yeah, so I mean that puts them on par with the Lakers and Bucks. So I mean, it's not like they're doing abysmal. They just lost to another potential playoff team, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing. It's better than the Lakers losing to the Raptors or the Bucks losing to the Nets. I would say that losing to a better team is actually something to be okay with more than that. Obviously, the Lakers clinched their seed, and the Bucks are relatively close to doing the same. But that being said, the Rockets also aren't anything to laugh at either. So them losing one game to a potential playoff team isn't really a concern to me. But the fact that these two weren't ranked as a top 5 duo in the NBA
It's disrespectful.
It's not even disrespectful. It just proves that you know nothing about the game.
Yeah.
You should just look at those names and realize that they're a top 5 duo.
Right.
Like it doesn't even require looking at the stats. Okay, so whoever made this list, this supposed official list of the top 10 duos in the bubble, and didn't have Harden and Westbrook even in the top 10, there's barely even 10. There's a little over 10 teams in this bubble. So that means that they're worse than most teams that are in the bubble right now. That's what that means. That's not true. Everyone knows that that's not true because the Rockets are a dominant offensive force. Harden and Westbrook are by far better than some of these duos they put before them.
Yeah. I know I don't want to just cut you off here on the Rockets. I think we've made our point here, but I'm getting giddy to move on to the next team we want to talk about, and that is the Indiana Pacers.
Yes, so
super interesting storylines here. In what was a trade between the Suns and Pacers for TJ Warren for cash considerations. And TJ Warren has led the Pacers to 3 wins in this bubble. He put up 50 plus against the 76ers. His next game against the Wizards, he put up, I believe it was 34. And then in his next game against the Magic, he put up 32. Obviously, Wizards and Magic aren't the greatest of teams, and 76ers have their fair share of struggles. But the Pacers aren't a joke. Them, along with the Raptors, I would say, are relatively large sleeper teams, especially with Victor Oladipo coming back to the Pacers. Pacers are going to be a surprise. How long TJ Warren can keep this up for will be interesting, but I'm intrigued by it, and I think that TJ Warren's dominance is stemming from that whole trade from the Suns.
Yeah, I mean, definitely an interesting storyline, and I'm interested to see how it develops. Because obviously the Pacers are kind of a team that's kind of flying underneath everyone's radar right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any. I think I'm the first person to ever hear say that the Pacers are sleeper. Obviously, I wouldn't bet money on the Pacers winning, but I would bet money on the Pacers continuing to have a very strong rest of the NBA bubble.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Other than that, in terms of major teams to cover, there isn't much. Dallas had another overtime game in the bubble with Sacramento. Not much storyline there besides just a little bit of struggles between Luka and the rest of that Mavericks team. And other than that, the only other storyline I can think of is just to talk about Zion Williamson and his connection with Lonzo Ball. Some relatively impressive dunks and lobs between that duo.
Yeah, I mean, Lonzo, I don't think will ever develop into a really great shooter. I think that time has kind of passed. I think everyone kind of realizes that now. He isn't ever going to be a dominant offensive force like he was projected to be coming into the league. But that being said, if he can be an assister to Zion, what Zion is able to do, then he serves a purpose, and that will give him a role. So the Pelicans could still use him.
Yeah. Last thing I really want to talk about for this stretch of games is the Boston Celtics and what seems to be relative inconsistency. They suffered a loss to the Trailblazers, and then on August 4th, they they beat the Trailblazers, my bad, and then they suffered a loss to the Miami Heat. Jason Tatum not having as poor of a performance as his 2 for 18 shooting day, I believe it was, earlier in the bubble. But I think it's interesting to note the overhyping that could be surrounding the Boston Celtics. They have talent to do well, but they're inconsistent, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about it, Brendan, but
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. You hear Boston Celtics and you think a team that's competing for the finals, but really this team has not been consistent enough so far to say that they're even a threat to the Bucks coming out of the East. So, I mean, I can't even say that I think that they're going to do well because I don't know if they will. It's so on and off with them that, it could go either way. So I think that they're overhyped for sure right now. I mean, I would 100% say that. Anyone who has the Celtics beating the Bucks to get out of the East is crazy. Okay, so that's the main point I think we all need to realize here is that they are way too inconsistent, and the Bucks are way consistent in comparison. So, and consistency is all that matters. You can't get lucky when you're playing 7 games.
yeah.
So,
Quick.
And I don't think they will even take the Bucks 7 games.
No, not at all. In my opinion, unless the Bucks have a freak accident like they did against the Nets, I would say Milwaukee would handle that series fine. Besides that, the only other thing that I want to mention is the outstanding play of the next Larry Bird, and that is Duncan Robinson on the Miami Heat. Super impressive season before the bubble, and he's continuing that in the bubble. He's always an electric player and fun player to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen too much of him. Definitely too early to call him next Larry Bird, so we should probably cool it there. Because I don't want to be pulling up this audio file in a few months or a few years just to make fun of you with it. But, I mean, he's definitely not been bad. I've seen his stat line. He's looking good. And he could develop into a really good player. Definitely too early to call him the next Larry Bird, though. Definitely.
Hey, man. You got to have hope somewhere.
Well, you're a Heat fan?
No, I'm not a Heat fan. I just, I'm being a Bulls fan. I like to follow the storyline of Jimmy Butler just to see where that career takes him. And now taking him to the Heat, it's interesting to see what he can do with the Heat. And Duncan Robinson seems to be a big part of that, along with,
okay.
Obviously, Bam. But
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that is it for today's episode covering the NBA and their most recent games. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it does help out the channel. And we will see you guys next time. Peace.